Well, I really don't know what it's like where you're at right now, but where I am, you can see I don't have a short sleeve shirt on. It's really kind of cold outside, and it's only the beginning of November. But I've got my cup of coffee, and we're going to warm things up with some music that is chill and uplifting with an artist named Crystoria. You're going to want to check this edition out tonight. You're going to want to stick around because we're going to dive into some awesome music and some testimony as well as we immerse ourselves in the world of Crystoria. And here we are. And actually, this is the second time this week. We had a special edition, our 100th edition on Monday night that kind of came as a surprise. Crystoria, thank you for joining us
Hey,
tonight.
thank you so much for having me.
It's exciting to have you. And for those of you that are new to Raven's Heart, oh, you're going to have a good time tonight. There's no question about that whatsoever. But go ahead, and you're watching us on YouTube. Go ahead and, oh, there it is right there. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so that you can catch up with some more great editions of Raven's Heart, because next week you're not going to want to miss it. Les Carlson, the lead singer from Bloodgood, is going to be joining us next week. So we're going back to one of the pioneers of Christian rock music.
Well,
Crystoria, I love that name. It just kind of rolls off my tongue, and it sounds surreal. But from what I understand, there's a powerful meaning behind that name. What does Crystoria mean?
So Crystoria is a blend of my first name, Crystal, and my middle name, Victoria. And I really just prayed on, God, what would you have my artist name to be? I wanted something that was meaningful and that would have a story behind it. And Crystal meaning pure, Victoria meaning victory, and together they have pure victory, which is what we have in Jesus.
So your first name is Crystal, and your middle name really is Victoria.
It is.
That is what a
Yes,
prophetic
Crystoria.
name. Well, I didn't go with blending my first name and my middle name. Glenn Cephas would not have sounded Now, my middle name is Charles, but really, this whole thing, Lithoscry, for me was I wrote a book. I had to read one first before I wrote one, but I wrote a book about Christian rock and Christian metal and how God actually uses that. When I started writing the book, I did not want to write it using my real name. I wanted an artist name. And that's how I came up with Lithoscry, which is up at the top of the screen. And that's really become an umbrella for a lot of different aspects of ministry. So pretty exciting and really neat how God gives you those things. And,
Yes.
really talking about victory in Jesus. That is so important. But
Yes.
unfortunately, there's a lot of believers today that I've encountered. They don't walk in that victory. They feel defeated. Why do you think that is?
You know, I think well, one, we're human. We are ones that you know, we are born into sin. We automatically have our own struggles. And we also live in a world that is kind of like a microwave society where we are on the run, on the go constantly. And in the scripture, God tells us that we are to um, take up our cross daily and follow Him. And one thing I think we tend to fail at is taking that moment to really just pause and reflect on who God is, what He's doing, giving Him thanks. Because when we don't have our guard up, when we don't have our armor on, that is when the enemy comes in and tries to steal, kill, and destroy. The very first thing that the enemy would love to do is to steal our identity. And if he can steal our identity and try to make us believe we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we automatically have this thing of, feeling defeated and causing us to forget who that the victory is won. Um, so that those are my thoughts behind that.
That's pretty profound. I do want to ask you a follow-on question to that.
Yes.
Would you say that the world, the way that it's set up and the way that it works, the way that the prince of the power of air is managing things right now, that it purposely runs us down to feel defeated?
I think that's the enemy's goal.
He's got it rigged that way.
Yes.
And what would you say would be, a Bible verse that really rings true with you, that shows us all that we who are saved are victors in Jesus? Do you have one that you would like to share?
No, I would say, you know, my go-to verse has always been for the longest time, ever since I became a Christian, and um, Philippians 4:13. I know it's so simple, but I can do it with all things through Christ who gives me strength. We are capable of being able to do the impossible with Christ. Um, and I think so many times that's hard for us to believe, but when we do hold on to that victory, um, he is. He's able to. I've seen miracles happen in my life. I've seen God do, so many different things that I cannot even put words to them. Um, but I hold on to those things because um, he's God.
Yeah. Philippians 4:13, it is a very simple verse, but I think in the simplicity of that verse, we just kind of glaze over it and don't grasp hold of really what it's saying. And that's kind of the way God is. There's the power in the simplicity. We a lot of times get caught up in the trappings of the complex with what he's doing and the way that he works and everything like that. But just holding on to that simplicity. Maybe there's somebody who's watching tonight, watching on the replay or listening on the replay, that what you need to do is just hold on to Philippians 4:13, that you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Our flesh is limited. We're limited in what we can do, but it's Jesus that gives the strength to do that. And that is basically, from what I'm picking up on the story of your life, of Jesus giving you the strength to all that you do.
Yeah.
Because for those of you that don't know it, not only do we have a very talented and gifted artist with us, but Crystoria is the mother of four. And that is a whole management experience in itself. How well, going back to, I understand Philippians 4:13 is how you balance that, but how do you do that? I mean, so many people, they get limited in their mind as to what they can do, and they get focused on one thing and focused on one thing. I know Jesus is the answer, but how do you put that into practice?
By the grace of God. You know, seriously though, like, actually just wrote a thing on my social media tonight, about how I used to live in this can't mentality, like I'm not able. And those were lies of the enemy. And just holding on to um I am able, speaking truth over my life, speaking the scriptures over me through very hard situations and allowing those things to carry me through has allowed me to be able to press forward in a lot of different things. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. But had I not stepped forward and said, I can, I believe I'm able, um, would I have ever had the chance to be doing what I'm, doing had I just lived in a camp mentality, hiding in a corner with my eyes shut, you know? And so, like, as a mother of four, really taking time to do the taking up the cross daily. Do I do that every single day? I want to say yes, I do, but there are days that I fail. I want to be real with my following and my people. I'm human just as much as you guys are human. Um, and just having a really big desire to seek his presence and to really just say, God, how can I go about my day today? I'm very schedule minded. I try really hard to schedule things out. I fail at that sometimes too. I used to say when my kids were little, because my oldest is now 12, but when they were really young, I'm like, I had to run my house like a preschool. Like I had to be very, very scheduled minded to be able to, get things done and keep the house clean and keep things functioning. And now I work, I'm a full-time mom. I work full time from my home. Plus, I'm doing music, and I really do have to have that schedule mindset, but only by the grace of God am I able to do that.
Yeah. And a lot of that boils down to the stewardship of your time
Yeah.
and learning how to steward that time. There's a discipline to that. And when we get to the music in a minute, wow, those that are tuned in are going to be amazed with what you hear because this is top notch level music. Uh, where were you in the 90s when I was miraculously born again and went to Zondervan's and bought a bunch of Christian music tapes? It's like, "Ugh, what is this? I'd rather be, if I'm going to listen to Metallica or dance music, I'd rather be listening to that. But this is quality stuff. And I'm very excited to have Crystoria with us. And one of the things that makes your music so genuine is you're the one that writes it. You're not, there's no producer or music company pulling a song written by Linda Warren out of the catalog saying, oh, here, go ahead and sing this one and try this one out. When did your adventure of writing and writing music start?
So music has been a part of my life since I can remember. Um, I, my father was an independent artist. And when I was 5, I really just fell in love with the industry. But when I was 11, I got this guitar when I was 11 and
Nice.
I started playing it, and within 2 years, I was writing my own songs. At the time, I believed in a higher power, but I was not a Christian at the time, and several years, had went by. I was pursuing country music at the time, and in my late teens, I devoted my life to Christ and really told him, I want to glorify you in my music, but I didn't know what that meant. I had a really hard time. How do I want to put it? Relating to the music that was on the radio
Hmm.
within the Christian industry. It just did not feel fitting to me. And I did some worship leading for a while, and life just got hard. And so I paused. And in my deepest pain, in my late 20s, I just sensed God telling me, you need to pick up the keyboard and you need to start writing again. And I want to heal you, but also I want to heal others through your music as well. And I held on to that prayer. I held on to that so much. I didn't play piano well, but I just began to just hear these words singing over me. It was almost prophetic of just like him singing over me in very deep depression and hardships. And those songs just really carried me through um, throughout those throughout those couple years of just kind of continuously singing the same songs over. God began opening doors. He began putting people in my life that I never imagined I'd be meeting. People who live down here now in Nashville. Me being in Ohio at the time, and I just was in awe of what was happening because I sensed like God wanted me to do something bigger with my music, but I'd never imagined how. And when He just began to put people in my life that was encouraging me and like saying, "Hey, like let's go to this songwriting thing." And in 2020, I just had this overwhelming uh, sense of Him wanting me to start putting it out there, releasing. Um, and just seeing where the Lord would take it. I didn't know um, what exactly I wanted to do. If I wanted to be the artist, if I wanted to just put out a song and then be just a songwriter. I really wasn't one that wanted to be upfront at the time, but he really changed my heart throughout the years, and here we are. Going
Yeah.
into a new genre really this year because I kind of just allowed the last couple years, starting in 2020, to be a season of sharing the journey with my followers of finding my sound and releasing songs that I would pray about and, sense like, okay, God, like, what song do you want me to release next? And each one had a little bit of a different feel. But then last year it was like everything kind of just came full circle to where it was like, okay, I think I know the direction we're going to go now. Like, let's do this. So here we are.
I had the opportunity of speaking with another group a group of artists on Monday night, and something similar happened to them in 2020 as well. They were going down one path. They were actually a liquid metal vampire pirate band, and they were believers.
Mhm.
And then in 2020, when everything just kind of shut down and it was you and the Lord, they're like, hey, we're going the wrong direction. We need to steer the ship in a different direction. So it's very interesting to hear that during the time of all that craziness, God was working on his people, and now they're
Absolutely.
being put to the forefront. And I really believe that that's something that's going to be happening again, because what we're experiencing now in the world, to me, is just as crazy and as Looney Tunes as 2020 was.
I agree.
I don't see it getting any better. As a matter of fact, the scripture says these things must happen.
Yes.
And I think the same thing's going to happen as well as we move forward. We're going to see a whole new, genuine bride arise out of all the ashes and the rubble that's occurring right now. God's shaking everything to get the stuff, to get the garbage out of the way, so that He can put His bride and Himself right in the forefront, so that people can see it. So when you started this whole adventure of music, you weren't like, "Hey, I'm going to be a rock star." That was not how this all started for you, if I'm correct.
No, no. I mean, what like I said, when I was a teenager, I was into country music. I was doing like contests and sung on grandstands and stuff. But then when I started getting into my Christian music in my late 20s, I'm like, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to go back up on stage. I'm just going to sit back and write for people. I think I'm just going to find comfort in that. And it's just interesting how God began to just stir in my heart kind of old passions, but
Mhm.
allowing myself to see those passions in a new light. Um, you know, I really covered up a lot of me that was part of my past, because of lies that the enemy had put over me or what people had spoken over me about thinking I'm not good enough for this or I'm not good enough for that. You can't sing that way. And so I had this mentality, well, that was the old me. So God really just kind of started stirring in my heart, like, I placed those passions in you and those talents in you back then for a reason, and you've been just kind of shoving them down over this time, and instead, I want you to take those back out, but I want you to use them for me. And it really allowed me to see, like, okay, like I've been looking at this all the wrong way.
So this is one of those things you said you were not going to do again. It was one of those nevers.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that I've learned is never say never, because yeah, in the early late 90s, like 1999, 2000, I was on television. I had a television ministry down in Charleston, South Carolina. I was on the radio in Charleston, South Carolina. I was pastoring in Charleston, South Carolina, with a couple other things. And when I got done with all that, I said, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to preach again. I'm never going on TV, and I'm never going on the radio. Well, fast forward to 2023, about 20 years later, here I am. So tonight, I am going to say that I am never going to win the lottery. How about that?
Okay.
We'll see. But you're right about those passions. And wow, people really need to grasp onto this. This conversation that we're having tonight is so in depth and something that needs to be heard by a lot of people, because a lot of people are ashamed of their passions, or
Mhm.
they have had things spoken over them about their passions that, oh, you'll never amount to anything in that, or they'll be discouraged in that. And it's the hardest thing that they have to fight through. And that's actually where they've been called, but they unfortunately miss their calling because they've given into that defeat. They don't walk in the victory that you've started to walk in.
Yes, and, one thing I will say this, well, 2 different things I wanna share. You were born for such a time as this. God created you in your mother's womb with those passions, with the hardships in mind, with the struggles in mind. He knew what your future was gonna be. He knew everything. He even knew what you were gonna be going through, like, in general as in the world, like the pandemic that we went through. Like, he knew all of these things that you'd be living through, and he didn't make a mistake at that. That's one thing I think we need to hold on to. And second is, I think so many times we believe that the calling has to happen now. When God places, this passion or this burden to do something, it doesn't mean now. If anything, it means start preparing. You know, King David, when he was, a shepherd, like he knew he was called to be king, but that didn't happen right away. He went through a season of, to me, preparing. When I was 19, I was, getting into ministry. I had become a youth director at the church that I was attending. I became a worship leader. Um, and I just had this feeling of like, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing music, but how am I going to do music in this tiny little town and like, not knowing anybody? And I literally allowed myself to deal with so much frustration. And at the time I was ashamed to even admit that. But to be honest, I had taken these youth girls to a conference that we were at, and I'm watching this lady sing, um, and she's worshiping and she's sharing testimony and all of these things, and I'm like, I start weeping. I'm in the front row, just bawling my eyes. I'm like, God, like that is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I truly feel called to do, and I just you can't deny when you have those moments with God when it's such a heaviness on your heart. And she actually came down to me and she's like, I'd love to pray with you afterwards. And she didn't know what I was going through. I ended up messaging her after the conference and she's like, if it's God's will for you to do music, it'll happen in God's time. And, a part of me was like, that's just the normal cliche answer that everybody doesn't want to hear. But at the same time, I'm like, she was right. And my life at the time seemed so messed up. I was in a very rough situation for the last decade. And that, here I am in Nashville now and kind of starting life over from the last decade. So during the time, I'm like, God, like my life's so messed up. I don't know how on earth I'd ever be able to do anything like that. She has no clue what I'm dealing with. Fast forward, God created a way. Um, and one thing he really placed in my heart, instead of, I could be frustrated. Well, why didn't you do it then? And God really hit me with in a moment of prayer, like, had I let you do music then, what testimony would you have?
Mhm.
And that's one thing I think we need to keep in mind is if you feel called to something that hasn't happened yet, and you're in a very rough season, he is creating a story. He's writing your story right now. And it's very possible that the season that you are in, you are going to be speaking about, preaching about, sharing about to bring others to Christ one day. And to just hold on to the fact that he can turn anything that the enemy would want to do for evil into good.
This those that are watching, please share this edition. This is so important for people to hear this in this time and season that we're living in right now because God is calling his people to arise. He's awakening them. We're in the midst of an awakening. And what you're saying is what I am hearing preached at the church that I go to, that I am a part of, that I minister out of. It's what we've been talking about for years. And it's just really exciting to hear this from somebody that we just met like a few minutes ago for the first time, and what you're saying is resonating with my spirit. And there's a couple things I want to ask about, because as people pursue that calling in ministry, they feel the frustration sometimes because it's not moving fast enough, but then sometimes they throw the afterburners. They're like, okay, I know my assignment, I know what I'm going to do, throw on the nitro switch, the afterburners, and then within 2-3 years they're burned out and they think, oh well, maybe God hasn't called me to this, maybe I've gone down the wrong path, but it's really turned out to be burnout. Do you have any insights on how somebody can determine if they're burned out or if it's the wrong path? Is that something that you've had experience with?
You know, I've experienced burnout. I am just as the person that I am, I'm a go-getter. I will go, 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 go until I'm like, completely burned out if I allow myself to. Um, I think it's healthy for us to take pauses, on whatever season, whatever we're doing, whatever we feel called to do. Allow yourself to take vacations to just reflect on where you're at in your season. If you're feeling frustration, if you're feeling um, uncertainty, take a moment to just say, you know what, like, tell your pastor or whatever, like, I just need a break. You know, I took a break from ministry for several years, and a part of me wanted to just be done. But one thing I know is if you're truly called to it, God will not let it go away, you know. And I think that's something to recognize is like, if you're feeling burnt out, take a break, whether that's a week, whether that's 2 months, whether that's a couple years. Take a break and take time to just focus on your relationship with Christ. And if you are truly called to continue to do it, you will recognize those burdens, those passions will not go away. He will bring them back up again. He has perfect timing in everything.
That is worth its weight in gold. And Jeff Reynolds, one of our longtime viewers this season. Jeff, thank you for joining us. It says, Amen. This program is a blessing. Jeff, if you could help us and share this with as many people that you think need to hear this message that's being shared tonight. As I said, I met Crystoria through Facebook and email like a month ago. I was like, hey, need to get you on. We hadn't talked until the first time now. And one of the things that I want people to understand is that when I put together these show notes and these outlines, I'm like, God, where do you want this to go? And as I'm writing, I start to see and sense different things about the artist. So it's not like she and I got together. It's like, hey, let's talk about this topic. Or let's, and sometimes I send the outline. I'm like, man, I really feel like I'm shooting in the dark here, but it's just God's leading and his Holy Spirit. And that's one of those confirmations to me when I feel like throwing in the towel. Sometimes it's like, oh, wow, this really is. Oh, wow, I'm really hearing from the Lord. And it's just putting yourself in that position. I'm not bragging on myself. I want to brag on Holy Spirit, who just arranges these things for us to do this, to be able to minister to people. So please, if you're watching this, share this with as many people as you can tonight so that they can hear this testimony and be blessed by what we're breaking down in the Word. And I really want to dive into, and it dovetails with your song that you released just last month now, October, entitled Rush. I want to play that because those that are really being blessed by what we're talking about are going to be even more blessed by the music. What is this Rush about, and how does it reflect your relationship with Jesus?
So I wrote Rush last October, actually. And, like I said, I had just came out of a very rough season and trying to ask God, like, what direction do you want from me? And to be honest, when you're coming out of a hard season, there's healing that has to take place. There's a lot of different things that I don't know. For me, I had to process, and I, you know, to have to go through as somebody who was struggling with PTSD, um, I had to allow myself to take time to go through, the healing process. And the healing process sometimes is not very fun. Um, and and maybe to the people who listening, maybe you're going through a rough season right now. Maybe it's not PTSD, maybe it's something completely different, but you're going through a season of hardship, and in your mind you're like, man, if only I could just get to the other side. Maybe if I could just get to the happier part. Um, but see, the hardships that we deal with, they're there for a reason. And, God allows the hardships to build character. They're there to help strengthen us. They're there to just help us know that we need a savior and we need to cling to him. And when we do, it builds our faith. So, that's what Rush was all about, was crying out to God, being very true about our raw emotions, because I think as a listeners need to hear that us Christians, we all struggle sometimes. We all have our moments with, like, God, like, why? Like, God, like, could you just help me get to the other side? We deal with those things, and I think sometimes we're, especially those in ministry, we feel ashamed to speak up about those things, because if we do, well, then we're not qualified enough, we're not good enough, and that's not true. God, God can carry us through, but to just have a moment of prayer and say, God, help me not to rush, help me to be strong in this moment, and just get me through this, get me through this, the chaos of this life song is what the lyrics say. Because, and I think that's just a perfect description of what life can be.
This is Rush by Crystoria. You're going to enjoy this.
Waiting for you. God, in this moment, I don't know how much more I can take. Will you take this heart that's broken to help me mend so I will not escape? This road has brought me trouble. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. Why does it feel like the clock stopped ticking? I thought, I just want to move on. Would this night be any different? If only I could see the brink of dawn. This road has brought me trouble. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. God, I've fallen down so many times as times before. Try to run this course all on my own without you as my source. God, I've fallen down so many times as times before. Times before. God, I've fallen down so many times as times before. Try to run this course all on my own without you as my source. God, I've fallen down so many times as times before. These times before. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. Help me not to rush, help me to be strong, bring me through the chaos of my life song. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no. I don't wanna rush, I don't wanna rush, no.
I love it. That is amazing. I love it. I love the way that that ends. The guitar at the end of it, how it just kind of hangs out there. It just kind of gives that ethereal feel to it. And as I was sitting here listening to the song, we're talking about the grind of the prince and the power of the air, uh, Satan, and the way that he runs the world. The world, man, everybody thinks it's so great, but it's really an awful place. With all of the beating down that goes on, all the negativity, all of that. But thinking about the rushing for a moment, there was a book written, and it's a heavy duty read. It was written, I believe, it was early 1900s. It's called War on the Saints by Jesse Penn Lewis. I mean, it's a thick book, and it's about how to identify the true move of the Holy Spirit and counterfeit moves by demonic activity. And one of the things that really stands out to me the most is that when you feel that you have to rush or that you have to do it now, you feel this impulse where it's got to be now. More than likely, it's not Holy Spirit. It's a demonic entity pushing you to get you to move outside of God's timing. It's really interesting because the devil wants you to miss what God has in store for you and move you outside of God's timing. Why, Crystoria, from your experience, is it important to wait for God's timing and things?
Because God's timing is perfect. If we try to do things on our own, goodness, I just don't know how else to put it. Is that if we're not aligning in God's will, it's never going to be the fullest that it could ever be. Yes, people who are not Christians can go out and try to, can do things, and they can accomplish things. Yes, but when we step forward into our pure path that God has for us, there is so much more satisfaction. There's so much more fulfillment. There's so much more that He is able to do and work through us, that we would not be able to do if we did it on our own.
Yes. Jeff says, excellent song. I've now got a new favorite Crystoria song. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jeff. You're gonna like the next one too, because I really like it. And as I was, past couple of weeks, I've been in the book of Acts. I've been really diving into that. And the way that I study, I have not made it past the middle of chapter 2 yet. And this is about week number 3 on the book of Acts. But one of the things that was becoming so apparent to me was Peter's desire to rush things in
Hmm.
Acts chapter 1 and see it so clearly. But then in Acts chapter 2, things change a little bit. And what I mean by Peter's rushing of things, here they come down from the Mount of Olives, and Jesus tells them to do what? Wait.
Yeah.
Told them to do nothing else but wait. So while in there, in the waiting process, God knit Peter to be a leader and to stand up. He's like, hey, we're missing one of us, the guy that betrayed Jesus. We need to vote somebody else in now and make him the new apostle. And let's go ahead and do that. We need to do this now. And I really feel sorry for Matthias or Matthias, the one that got voted in, because you read about him once and then you don't read about him again. It was really God who intended Paul. And you see Peter stepping out of the timing there with that in Acts chapter 1 of, okay, well, I got to make this work. I'm supposed to be doing something. He rushes it. But then in Acts chapter 2, he gets it right on the day of Pentecost, where he stands up and he's like, hey, men of Judea, this is what's going on. And we see the birth of the church. He tried to step outside of that timing and number in Acts chapter 1. I was like, whoa, this really just ties in with what we're talking about with rushing things. The mood of the song, I like it. It's dark, it's dramatic. I'm very dramatic. I like dark, I like gothic, I like those type things. But that's very different from a lot of your other songs, which are kind of chill and uplifting, is probably the best way to describe them. Why did you use the dark and dramatic paintbrush to underscore what the message of this song?
You know, so Rush and even Rise, those two songs both have kind of a darker feel. I, you know, and I'm just going to be 100% real. When I stepped forward into Christian music, the very first thing that you think of is it has to be positive, it has to be peppy, it has to be all of these things because we're trying to write for the church. Um, my heart, I love writing worship. Don't get me wrong. I love, love, love writing worship. I get in co-writes all the time writing worship. However, when it comes to my own music, um, my heart's to reach the lost and the broken. We're called to be ones to go out and reach the broken. We're called to reach the lost. And as somebody who went through a very hard trials myself, I find myself often just allowing myself to process those emotions authentically in song, and those emotions aren't necessarily pretty.
Mhm.
Um, and my heart is to reach and relate to allow people who are broken, who allow people who are lost to be able to say, like, that girl gets it. That
Mhm.
girl understands the emotion that I'm going through. So that's where Rush and even Rise, the sounds are different because I've chosen, to be like, this is me. This is my most authentic self. It took me a break. I had a pause. I took a 1 year off of releasing music. Um, Story in the Making was my last release of August of last year, and that song was literally, it says, "Close one chapter, open another," but you have to turn the page. And that was kind of, you know, almost like prophetic of just like, this is me choosing to, step forward into truly what God has for me. I've been kind of doing it, but it's like I need to like close this and like kind of start fresh and start new,
Yeah.
um, and go into it full force of authenticity and really try to reach the audience that I feel led to reach.
I would also think it's therapeutic for you to write the way that you feel. There's a healing that takes
Absolutely.
place in that process instead of trying to bottle it up and be like, "Hey, we need to write according to the church standard of today for music." And that's what people relate to. They want the real and they want the genuine.
Uh,
I don't listen to mainstream Christian radio. As a matter of fact, I don't listen to mainstream radio at all. Now, I used to be on the radio, but I just don't because I can't. It doesn't do anything for me. On the Christian contemporary side, it's all the same thing over and over again, and it's like they got an AI, Chat GPT, writing the songs for them, and then on the I mean, I love classic Led Zeppelin, but there's only so many times I can listen to Stairway to Heaven. It's the same thing over and over again. Give me something more. Give me something real. And that's what I find so refreshing about, people that have been with this live stream know that I spend time actually searching for what I call the gems in music so that I can bring it out so that people can hear it. It's like, okay, this resonates. People haven't heard this and they need to hear this. Another song that I want to feature tonight, it's a little bit more chill and it's a little bit more upbeat, is the way we describe it, is Breathe. And it's also got a subtitle. What's the subtitle of that again?
I know.
I know. What can you tell us about this song?
So that was my very first release. Um,
Really?
yes, and so I wrote that in the middle of the pandemic. Um, and it was really kind of just this moment of reflecting on all that the enemy was trying to do in the midst of all of our chaos that we were going through. And kind of getting frustrated with the devil, to be honest. And I sat at my kitchen table and I just started pouring out words. It was very just poetic. And I had a track on my computer and I sung along with it. I'm like, like this is powerful. I felt like people needed to hear it. And that within a couple weeks, I had a couple people saying, like, we want your music on radio. And I'm like, I don't even have a song on radio. Like, I don't even have a song produced. And just really prayed about it. And like, God just kept stirring in my heart, breathe, like that's what the people need to hear for this moment, this season that we're in. To just take time and just breathe and not allow all this chaos that was going on and still is today, to really cause us to shut down. Like allow it,
Mhm.
if anything, allow it to allow what's going on around us to uh, be a reminder of what is to come. God,
Yeah.
God is going to bring a heaven down to earth one day. He's coming for his people.
Yes. Yes. Wow, I did not know this was your first. You would never know. I would thought this was a little bit more down the line. And I'm really excited to share this track tonight. This is entitled Breathe by Crystoria. The subtitle of it is I Know. You're going to love this song.
cause he knows what's going on. Oh, I'm not a perfect soul, but it's easy to look around and see there's something wrong. Oh, the devil wants to play the wolf and deceive the radicals, just trying to make it home. Oh, we see fear, we hear hate, but it's a vicious, harassing war, trying to tear it apart, breaking hearts, wrecking faith. But it's the business he's been in for all of these years. But behind the devil's old disguise, there's a lie, there's a thief trying to shatter our very lives. And no matter how much that he tries, there's a God who's standing strong in a battle that's been won. That my God is in control, even in these troubled times. He cares for every soul, and even in this crazy mess, he's preparing for time to call his people home. So breathe in and breathe out. It's time that we look up and know who's got our back through the rough, through the tough. He's bringing peace to every mess if we allow him to do the rest.
Now that's what I call chill. Feel like I'm running the 105.5 dance party online tonight. I love it. I love the elements. You've got some of that 90s vibe in there that I was used to. Yes, back in the 90s before I was saved, I went clubbing. I was at the club on Friday night and Saturday night. I couldn't dance. I still can't dance. So we're not even gonna try that. But that is just so beautifully done, so well done. And I never knew when we picked that song that was the first one that you've done.
Yes.
Amazing. Something about that breathing and just taking that breath. When you breathe in and when you breathe out, that deep breath in and that deep breath out, you're actually saying Yahweh.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
And he's the one that he put his breath in us. He gave us the breath of life, and
Amen.
how precious breath is. And that's something that we learned in during that time. Don't want to ruin our algorithm scores with going too deep into it, but it's very, very important. Wonderfully, wonderfully done song. This is music that needs to be heard. Again, if you're watching tonight, if you're listening on the replay, please share this and support Crystoria. This is music that needs to be heard. You're not going to hear this in the mainstream because it does not fit the cookie cutter of what the machine wants you to hear. So we're here to defeat the machine, or we're here to rage against the machine. Another great band, by the way. But not only do you write music and produce music, but you also mentor other artists as well. Can you tell us about the program that you have to do that?
Yes. So back in 2021, I launched a course called Songwriter Social. And, for the years leading up to me pursuing songwriting, I was heavily involved in entrepreneurship. I had an antique shop, I did direct sales, and God really began giving me a passion for marketing. And I just didn't understand why at the time. When 2020 had hit, God told me to let all those things go. Like literally, it was like boom, like you just need to quit, and I did. And within 2 days, I had a friend reaching out saying like, "Hey, you need to like do the songwriter thing," and I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." So as I started pressing forward into the music world, I started seeing this need of, people saying like, how do I do my social media? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I'm like, I know, like, but I don't feel qualified enough at the time because I was just stepping forth. But I started applying everything that I knew with my own stuff. I self promoted my Breathe. Breathe actually was on 36 different stations when it released because
Okay.
of my own marketing skills. And so I just started was like, you know what? Like if I can do this, I think I can teach others because I've taught people to do similar things. I've taught people how to do marketing. I've taught people how to do social media. And so I developed a course. I had done a 8-week course to start sharing those things. And I don't have one currently available, although that is something I do hope to be able to launch again in the future. As of right now, I do side. I help people on the side, different artists, whether that's for promotional stuff, like for their artwork, for just even doing a one-on-one Zoom call and saying like, hey, like let's come up with a game plan for developing your brand. How can we apply that to your social media? What would that look like? As well as helping people like with just kind of putting together their bios if they are in need of such. So
That's all very valuable stuff. A lot of times we neglect the fact that we have to present ourselves. It's just part of the way that things have to be done. And there's a prophet that I am very familiar with, follow very closely, and I've actually sat under his preaching and teaching. And he was talking about getting over this whole nameless, faceless generation thing. That God gave you a face, and He wants it to be seen. It's, you
yeah,
know, it's how you present that face, and
it
who you're
is.
presenting for. So when we market our,
Absolutely.
um, it's just we are marketing Jesus. We are representing Him here. Jeff's got a question. It said, I may have missed it, but did you mention Crystoria won the WVIU Songwriter on the Rise Award last year? Did you do that?
I did.
Well, congratulations.
um, yes, I did. And going back to what you were sharing, one thing I think we live in a world where everything it seems like falsehood, like everything feels false on social media, and that's kind of what our society has become heavily involved in. And so, like when I communicate with these songwriters, whether that's in the course or whether that's on a one-on-one level, really just asking them, who has God called you to be? What does that look like? Take time and like pray about like 5 qualities about you that God says that you are, and really take time to say, does your social media show those things? And if it doesn't, don't be posting those things, like really
Right.
just learn to be authentic and who you were created to be. And when I did ask those questions to these artists, my friend Annette, she's amazing lady. She had and I know she would not feel she would love that I'm sharing this right now. She really she came to me saying like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know how I'm supposed to be running the social media. And I told her, I'm like, what has God called you to do? What are qualities about you that God says that you are? And one of them was funny. She's like, God sees me funny. And she's like, I joke around. I'm like, I've never seen you do that before. And so she started doing these parodies and she started doing these videos, and it was immediately she just had this like all these people were like, I've never seen this side of you, and she had so much joy in her heart, so much fun with it. And next thing I know, she's out, she's doing these tours at these churches all over the place sharing her gospel music, and I'm like, she's just has, I don't know, something about just being able to be her most authentic self,
Wow.
which really gave her the courage and the push to finally produce a song, finally release a song that she had never done before. She had never released music before. And being able to start doing conferences and concerts. And she's still, I mean, that was in February of 2021. And to this day, she's still going to churches, presenting her music. And I'm like, because she took that step of faith to just say, you know what, I'm going to be my most authentic self and really just asking God, who am I and how can I apply this?
And, you know, as we were talking about earlier, for those who are just joining us, I really encourage you to go back to listen to the beginning. To get to your authentic self, a lot of times you have to go through hell and back to get that. And that's that whole breaking process that God puts you through. It's not because God is mean. That's not the reason at all. It's that our flesh is just that stubborn. And there's these patterns in our mind that we need to get out of. And I find it funny how you're talking about, you know, the authenticity and social media. And we were talking before we went online tonight. My good friend Stacy Fannin from Revelation and Resistance podcast, we started the podcasting adventure together at the same time about 5 years ago. And we found each other on social media, and we've been buds ever since. And he sent me a video today of the top cities in North Carolina not to live in. And he's like, hey, the narrator of this sounds like you. And I listened to it, and it was my voice. Somehow AI has gotten my voice, and you listen to it. And I was like, I didn't do this. And I start listening to the sentence structure. It's like, yeah, that's AI, because nobody talks like that. But it was my voice, especially at the beginning of the video. And I was like, that is really, really creepy. So in case you're wondering, I did not do the video of the cities to avoid living in North Carolina. That is not me. And I really think we're going to run into two things with this. First of all, this whole thing of the ingenuine, because there's people that's just putting videos together that have AI do it, and then they put it out there and they want to make money on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's going to last for a little while, but I think people are going to get sick of that. I really think so, because they want the genuine. They want the warts and all with everything. That's kind of really the way the previous generation has been. And I think people are going to get sick of it. I'm sick of it already. I'm sick of seeing the videos with the narrator that's got the same thing. Did you know that, you know, the Simpsons predict the future? And, you know, you see that thing come up. But I'll tell you what, I just have to say this is just Glenn going off. That guy in the Middle East who dances with his belly with all the big food. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay. He is the happiest guy I have ever seen. And they always bring out this big plate of food, and he's dancing with, it's just, for some reason, I'm captivated by it. So I think it's just the smile on his face and that he's happy. And people, he's got like 5 million views on videos. And I'm like, well, you know, I think it's just because he's happy. People are into that.
People are into authenticity. They
Yeah.
want, you know, real. They want raw. And yeah, I think just being willing to pour value into whatever you're doing. That's really what, I don't know. You're going to have be the most effective.
Yeah. No, really, really. And that is something I think, and this is just me thinking out loud, and I'm just basing it upon my own experiences. I think we get into this mindset, especially when we're saved and we enter into a church community, that we need to change who we are, not the way that we do things, but we need to take on this different persona of, I am now sanctimonious and holy. Yeah. And I can't laugh because laughing is not mentioned many times. And it's not mentioned. I don't think it's mentioned in the New Testament at all, to tell you the truth. Well, because it's not in the New Testament, I will not laugh from here forth on. And then we speak and pray in King James all the time. And we take on this persona that is not us. And that's one thing that God's really been working on me with, because I remember before I was saved, you know, I had a sense of humor. I did a lot of things that were funny, but at the same time, I could be dead serious about stuff and really get stuff done. And I've really been hearing God speak to me to return to that point of my life where I was, you know, pretty much carefree and just being me. And it's okay to be me, and it's okay to be inconsistent. No, I'm not talking in righteousness, being inconsistent in that, but I'm saying in your personality, because the personalities that God gives us are so diverse. There's diversity in each of us. We can be funny, we can be serious, we can be academic, we can be this and we can be that. And you know, as we were talking about at the beginning, and as you know, I lean more towards the heavier side of music, more towards the metal side. And you'll find me at metal concerts, and I'm doing this live stream where I bring a lot of metal bands on, but I don't look like the metal guy. I don't look like that, but that's okay. That's a part of me, but I've got all these other things that are a part of me as well. And it's like King David. He was comfortable in his own skin. He was a warrior. He was a poet. He was a king. He was a shepherd. He did all these things, and he did them all at once, and he did them all with excellence.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. How can somebody that is an artist reach out to you to become a part of the 8-week course that you have?
So on at Crystoria.com, that's my website, there is a little tab in the menu that says Songwriter Social. If you click on there, it'll share if there's any updates on an upcoming course. Currently, there's not. However, if you are interested in what I am offering, you can also go to the contact section on my website, or even just reach out to me in my socials, Crystoria Music. Whether that's Facebook or Instagram, and just say, hey, like, this is what I'm in need of, and we can chat.
And is that the same place they can go to keep up with everything that you're doing, new releases, new songs that are coming out?
Absolutely. My website, again, Crystoria.com, or Crystoria Music at Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. You can find all of my updates, encouraging posts and reels and such too.
Neat. And you can follow me at glenncephas.com. No, only kidding. Lithoscry.com, Lithoscry.com. If you've got any questions, comments, if you want to make a recommendation for an artist that you would like to see us bring on, email me at Lithoscry, that's Lithoscry, at gmail.com. And hey, I am excited about next Thursday night at 8 p.m. because we are going to have the one and the only Les Carlson, the lead singer from the band Bloodgood, the pioneers, one of the pioneering bands of the Christian rock and Christian metal industry. We would not be here with Crystoria if it were not for the groundwork that men like Les Carlson laid down the foundation for in this particular genre. So I'm really excited about that, and we're going to be able to hear his insights of the wisdom he's gained over the years of being a Christian musician. So it's going to be awesome. One of those once in a lifetime interviews that we have in Crystoria. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You can hold on the line while I close everything out with everybody. Again, as I said, we will be back next week. Please share this edition. This needs to be shared with people that need to be encouraged, especially during this time that we're living in right now. And until next Thursday night, everybody, peace out and rock on.
Lithoscry.com